Thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective, the podcast with subject matter experts in marketing. So, my question is, are you truly listening to your customer in order to improve their experience? And are you doing so on the channel where they want to be in the context of how they want you to speak to them? Carlos Dominguez is the president of Sprinklr, a complete social media management system for listening and engagement, and he's a subject matter expert on customer experience. And on this episode, we'll discuss best practices in listening to and getting to know your customers in order to provide them the best customer experience. You have to know your customer in order to serve them. So let's tune in to a CX expert with a listening shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us on A Shark's Perspective. Tell us a little bit about your background and career thus far. I mean, why do you leave Cisco after such an illustrious career there and then join Sprinklr?
Oh, Kenneth, first of all, thank you for the invitation and wonderful to talk to you and all your listeners. So I spent quite a long time, almost 23 years at Cisco, had a lot of fun and had a front row seat of how the internet was actually disrupting things. And finally, when my boss, John Chambers, announced his retirement, it was time to move on. I was actually thinking of retiring and hanging out with my family, my absolutely wonderful wife. And I was on the board of Sprinklr for quite some time. And I had joined the board because I had seen the role I was playing at Cisco was a futurist. I had seen how social was really disrupting marketing and customer care and how you would engage with your customers. So I had joined the board, and when the founder Raji of Sprinklr found out I was retiring, he didn't let me. So he pursued me, and it's been I can't believe it's been almost 4 years.
Well, talk a little bit about your background prior to that. I read also where you had received a high award last year with Crane's Hispanic Executive and Entrepreneur Award. I'm sure you've received a lot of similar type awards over the year, but where are you starting to see more diversity, especially for Latinos in marketing?
Well, it's always an honor to get an award and representing the Latin contingency here in America. But to be honest with you, Kenneth, I every time I get an award, I feel like it's so undeserved. There's so many amazing people out there, but been very very fortunate in the tech business and having picked worked for some amazing companies and people where I've gotten a number of awards. But again, it's a collective, and I kind of laugh every time I get one of those awards. I think of all the hundreds of people that actually have helped me get to where I am. So I thank you for the question and humbled by it. And if I could blush, if my DNA would let me, I would be blushing right now.
Well, I get humbled by just receiving the participant ribbon for the for the least contributor in something. So let's talk a little bit then about the voice of the customer and
Yes.
the customer experience. Elaborate, if you will, a little bit on the value of the voice of the customer and the value of that voice to brands and marketers today.
Yeah, the real interesting part that I'm really always fascinated by is the tectonic shifts that have actually happened. I mean, if you think about it, the internet, mobile, and social are all under 30 years old. And most of your listeners, hopefully, are the younger generation have grown up with all these specs. But I can tell you, an old guy like me, I look at when I grew up and what it was like to do business versus what it is today. It's dramatically different. And one of the more powerful things is that there are 3 billion people connected onto these networks that we call social on a global basis, and they're contributing on a daily basis, things about brands, things about your competitors, things about their lives, things about what they like to do. And they're doing it in all sorts of forms, both video, text, and photos. And, one of the questions I always ask a lot of the senior executives that I meet with is, if this is going on and it's at a level and at a quantity that's mind blowing, like for example, every minute there's 528,000 tweets that go out, right? And the question I have is, with all this information and this contribution revolution that's taken place, is there an opportunity for us as marketeers to listen to these conversations. Again, those that are public, I'm not asking to violate any privacy rules, but those that are public, are you able to categorize it and organize it in a way that you're actually able to take some actionable insights that will either help you know more about your company and get some insights, will let you know more about your products, will let you know more about your competitors, or in many, many cases, help you sell more, which is, I know, one of the things that you're very interested in. So we're in a very unique environment, and one of the things that I do say and quote all the time is that you have to know me to serve me, right? And I think for the first time, we do have the ability to know our customer base in ways that were never possible in the past.
Agree, and I think the voice of the customer and that experience they go through, how it can be amplified on social can so dramatically affect your sales. That's one of the things over the years working with a lot of different brands I've always believed, and it's just amped up that much more over this last few years. So, in that context, then speak to the value of where people are making their voices known and divide out, if you will, say traditional social versus other channels. And what I mean by that in particular is I'm referencing review sites. And as you talk to people about their experience and where you see it, using a platform like Sprinklr, they do it across a variety of channels and platforms. Do you necessarily think or see more weight for a brand looking at a negative comment on Facebook, for example, any differently than they do a review on Yelp?
Well, those are all very lengthy and detailed questions, and definitely worth the time and the exploration. So let's kind of unpack it in the couple layers that you did lay out. So the first one is, we as businesses and brands, we don't pick the channels in which customers talk to us. They get to pick. And I think one of the radical mistakes that I think see a lot of brands making is they'll get a message on Twitter and try to move them to a phone call, as an example, right? And then to add insult to injury, they send them a survey at the end of the conversation on an email, right? So they contact you on Twitter, you move them to a voice, and then you send them an email. That's not the way the world operates. They want to be engaging with you on the channels that they choose. What has happened is there's, probably globally now 26, 27 channels. Some of them are video related, like YouTube. Others are very photo related, like Instagram. And then there's some that are open and public, like Twitter. Some that are private, like Facebook and others, and Snapchat. So there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of things that one has to follow. But as a brand, the best piece of advice I can give you is you got to be on all of them. And what's been
Agree.
happening more and more is it's all around as you begin. It's less about marketing these days, and it's really around having conversations. And one of the foundational technologies that I know you're very well aware of when you attended our event in Nashville is this notion of listening, right? How do you capture all of these channels and all this information and organize it in a way that you can take some action with it and either use it, to grow your business? And one of the real good examples is McDonald's had 13 consecutive quarters of negative growth. And when we started doing some really active listening of what the people were saying and their customers, everyone was talking about, why does the all day breakfast end at 11? Why can't I have pancakes at 3?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that simple, understanding that people were asking that, and then they kind of implemented it, basically reversed that, and they returned to growth. And incredible example. Another one is Dell. Dell, when they launch a product and they do active listening to all these social channels, what they're able to uncover is that if there are problems with the new product, it appears in on the social sphere within the first 3 weeks, and they would have not picked it up on their standard channels till about week 9, week 12. So that difference in time, the impact that you have on customers is pretty big, right? Because in the first 3 weeks, you may have 1,000 to 2,000 customers that are affected. By week 9 or 12, it multiplies to about 200,000. So the cost of that, the brand, reputation, everything else is amazing. So these channels are amazing. They're the voice of your customers. They're real time, and basically harnessing it and making sure that you take some action on what you find is really, really important.
So true. And I've worked on so many large scale, I think of like TV campaigns where the analytics come, with some sort of 30-day attribution after a 2-month campaign on a national scale. Then it's another 30 days before you get insights. And those are great because you see a lot of the sales data pulled in. But if you want to see how you're doing straight out of the box, the real time analytics that you can get with listing is just amazing. But at least I know now that I can get an egg McMuffin at night because you were there. So so
Well,
what are go
there's
ahead.
one other, if I may add, there's one other just component on that I think is extremely powerful. It's this notion, if you think of marketing, and if you think of ads, you would basically, or a marketing organization would through their agency create an ad, and then they put it up on a TV, right, and hopefully reach millions of people. We're at a point now where we've actually reversed it. That if I know you, I can actually create very much custom ads. We've worked with some organizations where in a period of about 120 days, we've actually connected via these social channels and reached a lot of people with 7 million unique combination of ads. Whether we change
Wow.
the headline, we change the photo, we change a couple of words in it, and what has happened is this real time feedback, this real time analytics, and for the first time, really knowing the people you're talking to, really allows you to engage with them in a very, very intimate sort of way. So the key point is that marketing as we knew it is has totally been revamped.
So what are some of the absolute best practices that you see in brands managing customer experience and social listening? I mean, how do brands turn an unhappy customer into a happy one just by listening and working with them?
Well, I think the bigger challenge, Kenneth, that we're facing in the world is not technologically based. It's really the people side of it.
Yes.
What has happened, and if you kind of evolve these organizations of what they're going to look like in the next, 5 to 10 years, they're going to be radically different. And it's not happening in marketing only. It's happening in marketing. It's happening in customer care. It's happening in sales. It's happening in corporate communications. It's happening in the legal side. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And what this is really exposing, what I see more and more with the majority of the clients I deal with, is that they're operating today in silos, right? And
Oh, couldn't agree
what you
more.
and not only in silos, each function has their own tech stack, that is different. The marketing tech stack is very different than the customer care tech stack. And what you find is that it's almost impossible to have, that single truth of that customer from one single source. And even in the marketing stack, in like for example in listening, I find in certain organizations, although there's listening in multiple functions like care and marketing and corpcom and all that, it's actually different listening solutions. And the data is never aggregated. So one of the best practices is really this notion that a company, in order to provide customer experience in a very, very actionable sort of way, it's not a group and it's not a function. It's basically the entire company, and that begins with having a strategy and saying this is how we're going to do it. It's about unifying the tech stack and having at least aggregation in one single truth. And what we see a lot of happening is most companies have a ton of data. And the way they're aggregating that is, of course, through a data lake, and they're bringing it all in. And then what you do is take that data lake and make sure you're enriching it with social data, but everything has to be aggregated so you have that one single view of the customer, regardless of how they reach you. The other really, really, really important best practice is that marketing and customer care need to unify. What I find, this is a prediction on my end, in the future, the best people to upsell and a customer is not a marketeer in an ad. It's going to be when they call you on the customer care and they're asking you for help and they're asking you, for advice. Once you do that, at that point in time, if you really know who they are, you know what services they're using or what products they have from you, you can actually, if marketing, knew that, they can actually target it in a very, very specific way to add value. And I think that's a dramatic change from the past. And last but not least, I mean, the best piece of advice I can give your listeners is just know that the world is radically changing and will continue to evolve. And what I would suggest is that that evolution really start with you. Don't wait for your company to tell you got to change. You should do it, right from the get-go now and say, hey, look, I want to be on the cutting edge. I want to remain relevant. And because of that, I'm going to do everything I can to learn as much as I can about the new world.
So, Carlos, what are some of the worst practices that you're seeing, brands do? Is it just not listening and interacting? Is it not taking advantage of data? Is there something else that you're seeing that's a common failure with people who aren't really using this kind of listening to help, save their brands?
Yeah, the worst practices is doing more of the same, right? Not really embracing all the changes and just continuing to do things as they were, right? And it was really interesting. I just met with a very senior person at a major brand that was responsible for customer care, and I asked that individual a very simple question. I said, if you project out 5 years from now, how will your customers be talking to you? What channels and how will they be engaging? Is it going to be the same way? And this particular individual goes, "Oh no," and they won't be calling the phone. And I said, "Okay, that's good." And I said, "So what are you doing about it?" And they go, "We're thinking about it."
Right.
So my notion is, the world is moving and it's going to move at an incredible pace. So from a worst thing to do is just do more of the same. You got to really anticipate, you got to experiment, and you got to bring groups together. The other thing too, the other faux pas that I see is that different functions are trying to protect their, what they do, instead of opening it up and trying to say, marketing and care, let's kind of talk, how are we going to engage with the customers? How do I give them, the right marketing message when they call me if I know who they are, and that kind of thing. So the key message is you can't do it the same way you've done it in the past. You got to really understand where the world is going and begin to experiment.
So one of the things that I wondered about after attending the customer experience last year in Nashville was, everyone was so enthusiastic. The speakers were amazing. The content was as good as I've seen it anywhere. And I know unfortunately a lot of people run out at the door excited and inspired like they do with any conference, but then a lot of times they don't take action on those learnings. And some of them, often try to do that and they try to sell up to senior management, even to enact on trying to get someone to listen to their customers and take advantage of your advice. What advice would you give a marketer to help sell up to senior management on to act on the listening and experience that customers are taking advantage of today when they communicate, when your brand's not listening? But what advice would you give to someone looking for help?
Yeah, I would. This is so simple. Is you make sure that you listen to the conversations on social, put it into examples, and make sure you share them as insights across the company. Whether it's something that someone in marketing or a CMO would be interested in, if it's something in customer care, and what you start doing is, as soon as you start sharing that and those insights, you become an incredible source of knowledge and valuable voice of the customer to the entire company. And I've seen that as an example of how people are doing it, and how basically, their status changes very, very quickly, where everyone begins to go to them. So share the data, right, and get it to the right people. Synthesize it in a way that's consumable.
So, Carlos, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Where can people find out more about you and the Sprinklr brand?
Well, very, very simple. If you Sprinklr, just go to sprinkler.com and do a search there. We couldn't afford the E, so it's Sprinkler without an E.
Right.
And if you just Google Carlos Dominguez, you'll find me on every channel, and you'll find a bunch of videos and everything else. Kenneth, I greatly appreciate your time and the invitation to do this. And I hope you and your listeners will find this informative and useful.
Well, rest assured, Senor Tiburon very much thanks you for speaking with us on A Shark's Perspective. So there was my conversation with Carlos Dominguez, the president of Sprinklr and a subject matter expert on customer experience. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, There are 3 billion people globally connected onto social networks across various channels in all sorts of forms. As a marketer and brand, are you able to categorize and organize that level and volume of conversations in a way that will either help you with your company, your products, your competitors, and or sell more of your products and or service? I love this quote from Carlos. You have to know me to serve me. We now have the ability to truly know our customer base by listening to what they want in order to serve them. Listen, 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 and listen to your customers. Second, brands don't pick the channels where customers want to talk to you, they pick. Customers want to engage with you on the channels they choose. You've got to be on all channels. It's not just marketing these days. It's really around conversations. How do you listen, capture, and organize those conversations? Third, as marketers, we love to test and work towards levels of attribution with advertisement and campaigns. However, this form of real-time analytics and feedback that we get through listening allows us for the first time to really know the people you're talking to and really allows you to engage with them in an intimate sort of way. Marketing, as we knew it, has totally been revamped. Got a question? Please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show regarding another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. Know that the world is changing and will rapidly evolve. That evolution should start with you. So join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.